people can be tough, real tough. Even for an emperor. Marcus knew that. One of my favorite quotes from him is, "When you wake up in the morning, tell yourself, the people I deal with today will be meddling, ungrateful, arrogant, dishonest, jealous, and surly. They are like this because they can't tell good from evil. But I have seen the beauty of good and the ugliness of evil, and have recognized that the wrongdoer has a nature related to my own." This is awesome because at first glance it would look like he's judging other people for being dicks. But to me, this seems like an amazing statement of empathy. One, not to be surprised that people struggle and then act from that, but also two, that he sees himself in that. He sees himself in being imperfect. And then that gives him the patience to deal with others. It's not good if we just keep yelling at each other, but if somebody else can absorb the anger, the fear, the sadness in a way that envelops them with love and understanding and patience and trust, it's a whole different way to walk through this world. Especially as an emperor, jeez, he doesn't have to do that. He can walk wherever he wants, on people's heads. I know we all struggle with different things, but perhaps it would behoove us to give others a break more often. He says we need to excuse what our sparring partners do and just keep our distance without suspicion or hatred. Just let it go, detach from it, remove yourself from it. Give them a break. Give yourself a break. Why do you have to get wrapped up in it? I get wrapped up in it when I used to wait tables in a restaurant. Woo! If someone gave me negative energy, for many years I was ready to give that right back. Sometimes I would even lead with it. But that's not it. Much later on in my service career, I found that not only could I combat other people's negative energies, but I could envelop it with my own and change theirs from negative or hangry to positive and full. Not every time, of course. Sometimes I got real shitty Yelp reviews, but most of the time, I got better at it. Marcus says the only thing that isn't worthless to live this life out truthfully and rightly and be patient with those who don't. That's something to think about. How are you with the people who wrong you? How quickly do you stand on a chair and feel hoity-toity? What? It's easy for us to fall into judgment real fast. Marcus tells himself to feel affection for people even when they make mistakes is uniquely human. You can do it if you simply recognize that they're human too. It's hard when you want to punch them in the face sometimes. But that's an epic reframe. Epic reframe, Marcus. Because he says, when faced with people's bad behavior, turn around and ask, when have you acted like that? Perhaps you too have behaved in a similar manner before you've had your coffee, or when you didn't get enough sleep, or when Chipotle was out of guac again. He says that you have made enough mistakes yourself. You're just like them. I'm just as bad. Even if there are some you've avoided, you have the potential. It reminds me of, I think it was Anthony DeMello who talked about this, is he was saying there's no difference between a criminal and a citizen besides action. Everyone has the impulses, everyone has the thoughts, but some people act on them and some people don't. But for us to judge those who have acted on them, it can be tricky territory. You might take offense to this. I'm not a killer or a murderer or a burglar. Again, some of these you may have avoided, but perhaps the potential is there. Interesting thing to think about. Marcus reminds himself, you have to know an awful lot before you can judge other people's actions with real understanding. This reminds me of a passage from the Tao Te Ching. I am good to people who are good. I am also good to people who are not good, because virtue is goodness. Thomas Aquinas said, every time someone sins, they're sinning under the guise of good. It would seem like a lot of times people aren't necessarily being bad to try and be bad. They're rationalizing their behavior in a way where it's okay for them to act like this because the situation then helps them. This doesn't make it right or particularly fun to experience if you're on the other side of someone acting shitty, but to them it makes sense. to them it works. And I think that's the interesting part of why people get so angry when someone says, well, they're doing the best they can with the tools that they have. And people are like, well, they can fucking do better. Sure, they can do better. But if you break down that statement, it's much more about the tools that they have. And this might get me in trouble. We all come from different experiences. We all have different brains. We all have different hearts. We all bring different things to the table. And when we meet with any number of these complex situations, perhaps that could bring out the worst in us. I don't know, is that politically correct enough? We're all great at some things, we're all shit at some things. But when you put us all together, that's the human race. We're all bringing different stuff to the table. What it all comes back to, Marcus says, it's silly to try to escape other people's faults. They are inescapable. Just try to escape your own. I also think that's interesting because it speaks to accepting all of yourself, not rejecting it, because it's a part of you. And when you acknowledge it, you're able to act from a place of that knowledge. And that's good and that's okay because it was there before anyway. And now you're acting from a place of knowing. It reminds me of Anthony DeMello, who said, what you are aware of, you are in control of. What you are not aware of is in control of you. We can't control what happens in the world. We can try and influence it, but we cannot act for them or for the world or for nature. We can't. All we can do is act from ourselves.